I'm standing with Adam Northam, who's the acting manager here at David Flay's Wildlife Centre, and we're in the butterfly house, which is part of the Richmond birdwing butterfly captive breeding program. Now, Adam, the first thing that I've noticed is there's no butterflies.
No, at the moment we've got a number of caterpillars in our butterfly facility. The butterfly stage is just a very short, small component of the whole butterfly life cycle. And so when you consider that they've got the larval stage, the egg-laying stage, and also the butterfly stage, that butterfly component really does make up a very short part of their life.
Now, we were just talking just before of how much this looks just like a normal average home greenhouse, but here we've got leaves which are riddled with bite marks from all the caterpillars. But I guess this is the one greenhouse where you don't mind that your leaves are being bitten.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if this was someone's greenhouse at home, they walked in here, they'd have shock and horror on their face because all their prized plants have been inundated by caterpillars. But for us, we couldn't want anything more. To see beautiful, healthy, fat caterpillars on vines munching away is just great for us.
So can you just take me a tour around the enclosure here?
Yeah, as we're walking around, you'll notice that we've got a number of these vines, and this is the special birdwing butterfly vine, and this is the host plant for the butterfly, and this is basically one of the only food sources that the caterpillars can eat. So in terms of the recovery and the longevity of this species, it's important that we also look after this vine because there is that symbiotic relationship between the vine and the butterfly.
Now, I know that the species used to be quite popular and quite prevalent around the southeast. Is that because the vine used to be there and now there's not as many?
Yeah, very much so. The habitat's quite fragmented, so we know that these butterfly species don't travel long distances, and so they live in very small, refined pockets, and once these small pockets disappear, basically that little population or that group of butterflies will also disappear. One of the other threats that's threatening these butterflies is that there's another similar species of vine, looks very, very similar to this birdwing vine, and it's called the Dutchman's pipe. It's actually an introduced weed, and it's poisonous, it's toxic to the caterpillars, so the butterfly comes along looking for this host plant, lays its eggs on there, and as the caterpillars hatch out and eat that vine, they all die.
They don't have much hope when not only are poisonous plants out there, but ones that mimic the ones that they should be eating.
Yeah, that's right. And it's quite confusing. I mean, this butterfly isn't supposed to be coming into contact with this exotic plant. So the butterfly, doesn't really know how to identify or the difference between the two. And for all intensive purposes, they think they're the one and the same.
Can you just talk me through what's going on these vines here at the moment?
Yeah, so as you notice, you can see on this leaf here, we've got a very nice little young Richmond birdwing butterfly caterpillar. So this is the larval stage. These guys are a range of different ages. We've got about 60 of these little guys in here at the moment. And very shortly, after getting a big belly full of birdwing vine, they're going to turn into what we call a chrysalis, which is another part of their life cycle. And they can remain dormant in this stage for any length of time. And then after this, they hatch out this beautiful Richmond birdwing butterfly, and I mean, to describe it, it's probably one of the most fascinating butterflies we have. We're quite lucky to have them here in southeast Queensland. They've got a range of greens and yellows and blacks on them. They're not commonly seen, but when you do see them, you won't mistake them for any other type of butterfly. They're absolutely gorgeous.
Have you ever personally seen a butterfly emerge from its cocoon?
Yeah, over here, just on this this little station here, you can actually see the cocoons that we have. So these cocoons here are old cocoons that the butterflies have emerged out of this chrysalis stage, and you can see how they hang and suspend themselves from the underside of this leaf, which also offers them a bit of protection, a bit of camouflage.
What's it like to see? I can imagine it'd be pretty amazing.
It is. Just before they're due to emerge, the colours of the butterfly become visual through the outer layers of the cocoon. So you can actually tell when they're very close to hatching. But probably the best part of it is actually seeing just after they've emerged. They're in beautiful condition. Their wings are in pristine state. They haven't been damaged or knocked about.
So at what point do you release them back into the wild?
Yeah, well, part of this project here is to actually try and increase the genetic diversity of the butterfly colonies. So we have a distinct colony here on the Gold Coast in fragmented pockets, and there's also another group which is up on the Sunshine Coast. They're very, very rare throughout the Brisbane area. And so what we're doing is we're bringing butterflies from the Sunshine Coast and collecting butterflies from the Gold Coast, bringing them into our facility here. We're breeding them and hopefully having that mixed genetics. Obviously, one of the problems with huge amounts of inbreeding is the fact that these butterflies, they have the potential to have deformities, lower fertility rates, and so it's very, very important that these butterflies are able to cross-pollinate, if you like, and have access to different genetics. And this program is part of that. And once the butterflies hatch out, we can let them go in the wild, and then they can recolonate with these new blood or this new genetics, if you like, to try and sustain these wild groups.
Is it even in any thought process to have a corridor of the vines down the coast or between two coasts?
Yeah, it is. One of the things we know is these butterflies, they don't travel distances greater than about 30 kilometres. So what it means is that we need to have these sites of station points of these vine species at distances no greater than 30 metres. And if we can achieve this throughout the whole of southeast, from the Sunshine Coast through Brisbane and down here to the Gold Coast, these butterflies will have a huge range that they can work through, and they can meet up and meet other butterflies, which will be really exciting.
It's like matchmaking, really?
Yeah, matchmaking for invertebrates.
So can you explain an average day for me of someone who's looking after these butterflies, looking after the enclosure?
Yeah, I suppose one of the first things our rangers do each morning is they come in and they check our butterflies for the condition, and they also check our caterpillars. They'll go through and they'll check all these vines that you can see and make sure that they've got enough water and they're well hydrated. Then they'll leave here and they'll go out into the bush and they'll collect blossom, native flowers, because for the butterflies in particular, they have a rich sugary intake that they need. And so we go out and we collect these native flowers and blossoms, and that can take us quite some time depending on what's flowering in our local area. And we bring those back, and then the guys have to go through and they scour this whole facility you can see here, and they're looking for any sort of pests. Now, as you can see, we've got this pretty tight, but even the smallest of little spiders can get in and they can really harass our butterflies. So they go through and they meticulously go through this entire enclosure. They look under pots, they look under the leaves, they look everywhere, just to make sure that nothing's got in that can threaten these butterflies. So that's part of their routine as well. And then they also monitor things like the humidity and the temperature. You can see we've got a gauge behind us here that monitors maximum and minimum temperatures. It also reads the humidity. These butterflies really only become active and start feeding above 24 degrees.
It sounds like they really do have the best chance possible with, I don't know, I'm just equating it to their own security, their own caterers, their own reverse cycle air condition and humidifiers. So you really are giving them the best chance possible.
Yeah, we like to think so. What we're basically doing is removing all the threats that they'd be facing in the wild and try and give them the best chance of survival. Yeah, if we can replicate the wild in its best state, these butterflies will stand the best chance of surviving here.
Well, let's hope that in the not too distant future we can see them in our backyards.
Yeah, that'd be great. And instead of just having the name pop up every now and again, actually people recognising and knowing, hey, that's a Richmond birdwing butterfly and I've got it in my backyard would be absolutely fantastic. And it is an iconic species for the southeast. So for us to know it and recognise